So this is the S22 Ultra versus the iPhone 13 Pro, and I know the video comparison is a little bit late with the 14 series being right around the corner, and I also know there's also an iPhone 13 Pro Max, but I only have access to the smaller Pro models, so we're going to use this instead. They're pretty much the same except for the size. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about them and see how they compare. So starting off with the design, both of them look and feel like premium devices. Honestly, whichever one you get, you're not going to get a cheap looking and cheap feeling device here. You know you're going to get a high-end device when you pick one of these two devices. So they both got frosted glass finishes on the back, so you don't get much fingerprints when you touch it on the back. But on the sides, you do have a glossy finish to them. On the S22 Ultra, you have an aluminum armor, I believe. So it's got, you know, some curved sides, curved frame, so it does feel pretty comfortable when you're not holding it with the end at the bottom on your palm, because the sides of the top and the bottom are flat. So that means that the S22 Ultra is going to have some pretty sharp corners. So in the hand, it's going to dig in a little bit after some time. So it does lead to some discomfort after some time. Even the case doesn't really help. It does make it feel a little bit less sharp, but still it just still digs into your palm. And the iPhone does have flat rails. I believe it's stainless steel, and again, it's glossy, so it does pick up fingerprints, but the edges become a little bit sharp after some time. So it doesn't feel as annoying as like the sharp corners of the S22 Ultra, but it does lead to some discomfort, at least for me, after some time. But it's less, like I said, less annoying than the sharp corners of the S22 Ultra. And with a case, it definitely helps. So if you put like a soft case on it, it makes it so much more comfortable. So as far as like how it feels in the hand, I would definitely give it to the iPhone 13 Pro, just because you can easily fix it with a case, unlike the S22 Ultra that still feels a little bit uncomfortable with the sharp corners. And not to mention that they're both pretty heavy devices. Now, they're not like super crazy heavy, but you can definitely feel the heft to them. Even with the iPhone being smaller, it still feels just about the same weight as the S22 Ultra. As far as that hardware and buttons and ports, you do have USB-C on the S22 Ultra versus Lightning on the iPhone, which is pretty annoying to say the least. You have dual firing speakers on both devices. Now, I will say that sound does sound, or music, I guess when you're playing music, playing videos, does sound a bit louder and a bit more well-rounded on the iPhone compared to the S22 Ultra. S22 Ultra just seems to lack a little bit of like oomph to it, if I could say, but it doesn't sound bad at all either. It's just when you compare it to an iPhone, you can hear a bit of a difference, and the iPhone I think sounds a little bit better. You also have the power button and the volume rocker on the same side on the S22 Ultra compared to the iPhone that has it on one side with the power button and on the other side has the volume rocker. And the volume rocker is split up into two buttons, which I think is pretty more convenient, or I like it better for some reason compared to the single volume rocker of the S22 Ultra. And not to mention, the buttons are a bit bigger on the iPhone compared to the S22 Ultra, which I also seem to like. The iPhone also has a mute switcher, which is very convenient. So if you're ever in a situation where you have to mute your phone, or you forgot to mute your phone and you have it in your pocket and it starts to ring, just quickly switch the switch and you're good to go. So I think it's one of those features that I never thought I needed until I finally started using it on this phone and also on a OnePlus phone. And now I want it on every phone. So hopefully more manufacturers such as Samsung add it to their future phones. I doubt it, but it'd be really cool if they did. Now the S22 Ultra does have the S Pen, which is convenient for some people. So I feel like there's a couple of different users out there with the S Pen. So there's like those people that actually heavily use it and actually rely on the S Pen for writing and taking notes, or just using it for Bluetooth features, for their gestures and stuff like that, or air gestures I should say. And then there's those that like take it out to show it off at like, I don't know, to other people, other users who don't have an S22 Ultra or don't have an S Pen with them, you know, just like to show it off, a party trick essentially. And then there's those people that took it out the first day they got it and then they never used it again. And I think I'm like right in between the party trick person and also the person that just took it out the first day, because I take it out every once in a while. I don't necessarily use it all the time, but you know, it's there if you really want it. So that's something to consider as well if you're looking to keep a stylus with you at all times, which can be convenient to carry it with you at all times, but it's there if you want it on the S22 Ultra. And both devices are water and dust resistant rated as well. I do believe the iPhone has a better rating, not as far as like the number or name of it. I think it's both IP68, but I think the iPhone can go down in deeper depths and can also last longer in water as well. So besides that, what matters to me is that they can survive splashes. So they both survive splashes, so that's all good with me. As far as biometrics, you have the option of facial recognition and an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor on the S22 Ultra, unlike the iPhone that only has Face ID. So at least Face ID is pretty good, I will say. So not only is it secure, it's fast, it's reliable, it also can track you at night. So if you're in a dark, low light environment, it can still track you. Unlike the S22 Ultra, it won't recognize you if you're like in a very low light environment. So you have to have pretty good, decent lighting for it to recognize you. But if it doesn't recognize you, that's all right, because you have the fingerprint sensor to use, which has been pretty fast and pretty reliable as well. I also like that on the iPhone, you're able to like lock up your notifications until it recognizes your face, and then it will show you the information about your notification, which I find pretty convenient. But unlike on the S22 Ultra, you can't do that, but you have the option of hopping right into your phone. So as soon as it recognizes you, whether it be your face or your finger, it just hops right into the phone. So both of them have their negatives, but at the end of the day, I do prefer having both options, a fingerprint and a facial recognition. So I just think it's way more convenient, in my opinion, than just having Face ID. As far as the displays, you're going to be getting a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED 120Hz ProMotion display on the iPhone 13 Pro. And on the S22 Ultra, you'll be getting a 6.8-inch 1440p 120Hz AMOLED display. So what does that mean? Honestly, on the iPhone, you'll be getting a really good display. And on the S22 Ultra, you're going to be getting an amazing display. So in my opinion, I do think that the display is a bit better on the S22 Ultra, but to the average person, you probably won't notice a difference. So whether you're just scrolling around, text is going to look sharp, the display is going to be smooth on both of them. And as far as like watching content, I do think that the S22 Ultra does look a bit better, but it doesn't look bad on the iPhone either. It looks really good as well, but I would much prefer the display of the S22 Ultra. Now, as far as those intrusions, the iPhone's got that ugly notch compared to just a camera cutout on the S22 Ultra. And it also has pretty even bezels, but they're kind of thick compared to the S22 Ultra's bezels. Now, it does have a curved display, which is how it makes it a little bit thinner with the bezels. So if you're not a fan of curved displays, then you won't like that on the S22 Ultra. It is a bit annoying because it can add some glare when you're watching content, depending on how the light's hitting the phone. And also, it's much harder to put a screen protector on the S22 Ultra because of that curved display compared to the iPhone's flat display, which is, one, you won't have an issue with the glare, and two, it's much easier to apply a regular glass screen protector. But besides that, I definitely think that the display is going to be a bit better on the S22 Ultra, and iPhone is still really good, but it's just the S22 Ultra is going to be a bit better. As far as everyday performance, the S22 Ultra, at least the model I have here, it's going to have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 with 12 GB of RAM. And on the iPhone 13 Pro, it's going to have the A15 bonded chip with 6 GB of RAM. So what does that mean? Basically, both of these devices are going to have flagship specs, which translates over to really good performance on my day-to-day usage. So honestly, I don't have any complaints really about either of them. If anything, I encountered some choppiness every once in a while on the S22 Ultra with the animations, but besides that, it still runs really well, and both of them did have some occasional bugs. So both of them aren't perfect, but that comes down to the OS, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But all my daily stuff, such as browsing the internet, browsing around on social media, texting, calling, service has been good. All that stuff, the basic level stuff, has run perfectly fine. The only times I'll ever get the phones to warm up, and both of them tend to warm up after some time, but especially if you're playing like a heavy intensive game, they'll warm up to quite a bit. But even then, performance still stays pretty consistent on both of them. So honestly, I have no issues. So when I'm playing Rocket League, it runs great on both of them. And when you're taking photos and videos, you are able to warm both phones up as well, but I haven't had either of them get too warm to the point that I can't take photos and videos. Now, I will say that the camera experience is a little bit more slower, I would say, on the S22 Ultra because of that shutter lag. There is still a bit of a shutter lag, especially when you also open up the camera app at first. So besides that, either way, I still get good performance on both of them, and I wouldn't be disappointed on either of them. Now, talking about software, it's going to be, the old debate, Android versus iOS, but specifically it's going to be One UI versus iOS. So a recent thought that I had, which might be an obvious thought, but I just thought about it. So basically, I think that Samsung and Apple each took a different path when it came to their software. So Samsung with One UI focused mainly on like features and customization, and then Apple with iOS focused on building that ecosystem. So it's like an entryway to the Apple ecosystem. So let's talk about Samsung One UI here. So it gives you, like I said, a ton of features, tons of customization, everything from being able to freely customize your OS, such as your home screen. You can move and place apps anywhere freely on the home screen. You can adjust the screen grid. You can use Google Material U to change the colors of the OS with the wallpaper. You have the option of using software buttons instead of actual gestures for navigation. You can customize your app drawer. You can like move apps between each page and to create folders if you want to as well. There's also another app called Good Luck. It is, I don't want to say it's a third-party app because it is by Samsung, but you can add this other app that adds even more customization to your OS if you really wanted to. You also have the ability to use the Edge panel, one of my favorite features that basically hides away some apps on the side, and also you can hide some shortcuts to multitasking because in my opinion, I think One UI does a really good job with multitasking. You can literally split screen pretty much every app available, and just keep note that just because it does it doesn't mean it's going to work perfectly fine because some apps aren't optimized to work in like split screen mode, so some apps may bug out or they might just crash completely. But even then, it's still cool that you have the option to do that. You can also drop windows if you want to. Personally, I don't do that, but you have the ability to, and you can use picture-in-picture, which is great because I can just watch a video and then also browse another app if I wanted to. You also have the ability to use Samsung DeX, which I don't use, which is just another way to interact with your phone, so you can connect it to a monitor, whether it be wired or wireless, and gives you like a Chrome-like and Windows-like experience to interact with your device. And lastly, one of my other favorite features is Secure Folder, which basically allows you to hide away some like very important apps or files or pictures and videos, whatever you want to do. I think it's really neat, just keeps it more secure. And there's a ton of other features out there, but these are some of the more important ones that I focus on, but it's there if you want to use them. And just that's what I like about One UI. There's just so many features. And iOS, on the other hand, is going to be your entryway to the Apple ecosystem, which has been built up to be such a good ecosystem that it traps people within it that they don't want to leave because things just work so well together. They work seamlessly together. So whether it be your own Apple products or other users of Apple products, personally, I don't have other Apple products, so I only have an iPhone, but with other users, you're able to connect very easily, whether it be with iMessage and FaceTime. That's literally, I feel like the default now with like people in the States here. They always say, let's FaceTime, which they just mean let's video chat. iMessage with the blue bubbles, it's like a common thing. If you don't have them, you're a loser apparently. But there's other things as well. So like AirDrop, you can AirDrop between other users and also within your own Apple products as well. You have like the AirPods that it can connect to multiple Apple products and like choose which one is playing the audio and connect to those. You also have the ability to use the Apple Find My network, which is a really well-built network because it uses the information from other iPhones. So if like your iPhone passes by an AirTag, it'll update the location from it. So because there's so many iPhone users, the network is really strong. So stuff like that really builds the well-built or makes up the well-built ecosystem that is the Apple ecosystem. But as I mentioned, they're each trying to catch up to each other. So Samsung is also building, and Android I should say, is also building up a really well ecosystem. So like the response to AirDrop, there's Quick Share and there's Nearby Share. Quick Share is Samsung's version, and then Nearby Share is like Google's default version for Android. So for Quick Share, that works between Samsung devices, and I believe this might work between like Samsung laptops as well. So the laptops, the tablets, and the phones. And Nearby Share, I believe, is only between Android devices. So anything that's running Android will have the ability to use Nearby Share. Samsung also worked on Microsoft to bring Link to Windows, which basically allows you to connect your phone, your Samsung device, to a Windows PC and be able to receive messages, control your phone from there, so like you can actually use apps on the PC. You also have the ability to connect between two different Samsung devices, so Samsung tablets and Samsung phones can actually connect to each other and receive calls and texts. There's like two different ways you can do it. So there's the standard Samsung old default messaging app, which allows you to receive calls. And then there's a new Google Messages app that you can connect via QR code, and then you can receive your text messages, but I don't think you can receive your calls. So speaking about that Google Messages, they're starting to make Google Messages the default messaging app on all Android devices, because before there was like the Samsung one, there was, I believe, the Google Messages. I think OnePlus had their own version as well, and like Verizon even had their own messaging app. There's different messaging apps out there, and now Google Messages is starting to become the default, which is good because now there's RCS availability, which is not as good as iMessage, but it's still an improvement on regular SMS. And there's also Duo, which is like their default version of, or starting to become the default video chat app between Android devices. In fact, an iPhone can actually download Duo if they really wanted to. Samsung also has their earbuds that have the ability to connect to two different Samsung devices. So it'll know which Samsung device is producing the audio, and then it'll automatically connect to that device. But it's limited to just Samsung devices. It can't connect to other Android devices as well. There are other devices like the Sony WH-1000XM5s that have it built in that they can connect to more than one device, which is pretty cool. But this is just Samsung's ecosystem thing. And it also is the Find My network that's similar to the Apple. There's one for Google and there's one for Samsung. So Google's, I think, just bases off your like last location and Wi-Fi and stuff like that in your Google account. And then Samsung, I believe it's similar to Apple's Find My network, where it bases it off other Galaxy devices. So if a Galaxy device walks by another Galaxy device or a Galaxy tag, it'll update the location of that device because they connect to each other. So it might be not as strong as Apple's Find My network, but there are a decent amount of Galaxy / Samsung users out there, so it is a pretty strong network as well. So yeah, Samsung and Google have been building up this strong ecosystem as well, but it's definitely not as fine-tuned as it is on Apple, only because obviously there's so many companies out there, so many manufacturers out there that they're trying to work together, and it's not always going to work out perfectly. Unlike Apple, they control everything. They control their software, their hardware, so it's easier for them to make everything work together, unlike Samsung that has to work with all these other companies. But they're making it work pretty well in my opinion. I think it's a pretty solid, ecosystem, and not to mention options. You have so many options when you're going with this ecosystem versus with Apple. You kind of have to buy their MacBooks, you have to buy their tablets, you have to buy their phones for it to all work. So I guess you gotta consider it that way. Do you want a solid ecosystem but trapped into just a small selection? Or I say small, but there's a decent selection, but Apple selection, or you want the option of choosing a bunch of different selections. But that's as far as the ecosystem, because Apple is also trying to catch up to Samsung and Android with like being able to bring in a bunch of customization features onto iOS. Features such as being able to stack widgets on top of each other. Now, One UI has this feature as well, but I believe iOS introduced it first. You also have the app library, which basically allows you to store all your apps in one library. I like it, but I don't at the same time because you can't create your own folders. So sometimes I'm confused as to why a certain app isn't within a certain folder. You can also picture-in-picture now with YouTube, which at the minimum is how I multitask. I would like the ability to use split screen, but with this smaller display, I'm okay with not being able to do that. If I had the Pro Max, I would have wanted the option to. There's also an accessibility feature that allows you to double tap and triple tap the back of your phone to perform a certain action. I personally have one that pulls on the control center, which, by the way, I personally like both Samsung's quick settings and the control center at the same time, so I really don't have a preference over the other. And the other one pulls on the notification center, which is rather clean, but can be messy at times. And similar to Samsung's notification handling, it can be a little bit messy as well. Both will try to stack notifications from the same app, but sometimes there are multiple notification stacks from the same app. What I really do like is a notification summary, which is basically what it is. It's called a summary of notifications that can be scheduled to show up at your preferred time with your preferred apps. That way you're not being spammed all day with your notifications from like random apps that you have downloaded. And I believe you can use like the shortcuts app to really customize your home screen if you really wanted to. Personally, I'm not going to take the time to do that just because it seems like a little bit of a hassle, but it is there if you want to do that as well. Now, as far as software support, the iPhone 13 Pro should be getting 5 to 6 years of updates when it comes to iOS, which is really good. And on Samsung, they have promised with the S22 Ultra that they're going to be giving you 4 years of major OS updates and I believe 5 years of security updates. So both of them should give you a long time of life with the phone itself as far as like updates. And as far as like timely updates, Samsung has improved it over time, but usually when a phone gets older, they start to ease back on how soon a phone gets an update. So with iPhones, when a new OS update is available, every iPhone gets it. On Samsung, sometimes the older model tends to get the update a little bit later, and also depends on the carrier sometimes, but it's been improving. It's gotten better at that, so hopefully in the future it gets much better. But at the end of the day, each OS, while there is some similarities, they are going to be vastly different because of the different features, customization, and the different ecosystems. So you're definitely going to think about which one you prefer, whether you're already in one or if you want to make the switch. You definitely can make the switch. It's just going to take a little bit of effort to get adjusted to it or get used to it and stuff like that. So for me personally, I prefer One UI. I love the features, the customization, and I'm already kind of built into that Samsung/Google ecosystem. So I can definitely make the switch, but I've preferred it much better on Google and Samsung. But maybe at some point in the future, I'll make the switch and try it out. But for now, I prefer Samsung One UI with S22 Ultra. As far as the cameras, honestly, both of them are going to give you a really good camera system. For the average person like me that just points and shoots, you're gonna get a good experience on both of them. Photos are gonna look really good on both of them. Now, I do wanna note that on the iPhone 13 Pro, for photos, I am using the standard photographic style. So you have the ability to switch them up if you want to, but all the photos I took were all on the standard photographic style. So as far as the front for photos, they looked very good. And at times they looked very alike in my opinion. I think my skin color looked somewhat accurate on both of them, and there was good detail on both my face and in the background at times. And at times it did depend on the lighting where one would look better over the other. As far as video, I recorded both of these in 4K 30. And honestly, similar to the photos, they both shoot really good video. The videos look sharp, good color, and well stabilized. And you can see a little bit of a difference, maybe anything on the S22 Ultra looking a little bit more colorful, more saturated, but besides that, both of them look good enough for me. As far as the back, both of them, like I said, take really good photos, but you will notice that Samsung does tend to make photos look a little bit more colorful and a little bit more saturated. It all depends on the situation where that extra color and the extra pop of the stuff saturation does make the whole photo look a little bit better. But sometimes the natural look of the iPhone from standard photographic style does look a little bit better as well. So again, it all depends on what you're taking a photo of, where the color profile may look better on one over the other. And as far as lighting as well, you can actually see a difference here. I think the iPhone does a little bit better of a job bringing in more light and more detail into photos compared to the S22 Ultra, especially in video. When you're recording low light video on the iPhone, it looks a lot better in my opinion compared to the S22 Ultra. But as far as just like standard video and like decent conditions and decent lighting, both of them look pretty good in my opinion. Again, where you'll notice a bigger difference is when you start to zoom in, because the S22 Ultra can zoom in much further. Now I also want to mention Snapchat real quick, because this is an app I use a lot, so it relies on the camera a lot. Both of them are really well optimized for it, and I even think that the S22 Ultra is better optimized for it, only because you're able to use the ultra wide and the telephotos when you're zooming in, so it just makes videos and photos look much crisper, because when you're zooming in, you can actually use an actual lens for it. So at the end of the day, both of them, like I said, will give you a really good camera system, and I really can't pick one over the other. So if I was stuck with one, I'd be fine with either one, but if I really had to pick one, I think I'd probably end up choosing the S22 Ultra. But besides that, I think both of them really provide you with a good camera system. As far as the battery, on the S22 Ultra, you do have a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and on the iPhone 13 Pro, you have a 3,095 milliamp hour battery. So basically that means that I get pretty good battery life on both of them, and actually I get pretty equivalent battery life. So I definitely get about a day's use on both of them, with about 3 to maybe 5 hours screen on time at most. So my usage is pretty light, and it's usually not very intensive or pretty heavy, so I definitely can get the whole day with either of these phones. And as far as charging, you do have 45 watts of charging on the S22 Ultra versus only 20 watts on the iPhone 13 Pro. So it takes about like an hour to an hour and a half on the iPhone, and on the S22 Ultra, it can take just about an hour to charge. So there's definitely faster speeds on the S22 Ultra, which is very convenient. You also have wireless charging on both of them, and on the S22 Ultra, you can also use reverse wireless charging, and you also have the option of protecting the battery to 80%. So, and there's also features available on the iPhone as well, but at the end of the day, I think I end up picking the S22 Ultra only because of that faster charging. So at the end of the day, which one should you get? So first, I'll start out by telling you which one I think the average person should get. If you're not into the whole Android versus iOS debate, I would tell you go get the S22 Ultra. I think you're getting more bang for the buck with the S22 Ultra, better features, good ecosystem, good camera, good battery life. You're gonna get a lot of good stuff on the S22 Ultra. But unless you really need iOS, then I would say, yeah, I guess you can just go get the iPhone 13 Pro. Or I would definitely tell you to wait for the iPhone 14 series, but otherwise if you can't, then yeah, go get the iPhone 13 Pro. It's a really good phone, but I would prefer the S22 Ultra, which leads into my preference. So I personally would prefer the S22 Ultra. And the reason I'm comparing the iPhone to an Samsung device is because, like I said, I've always used Android pretty much since I got my first phone, and I'm trying to see if one of the iPhones is enough to convince me. And the iPhone 13 Pro, while yes, it's a really good phone, it's just not enough to convince me yet. Maybe the 14 series can convince me to go to iPhone, but as of now, I'm still not fully convinced to switch over to an iPhone. I like it, but it's not enough yet. So for me, I'm sticking with the S22 Ultra for now. And that's been it though. I hope you guys enjoyed. I also want to say I'm sorry I haven't posted too much in July. I was going through a lot, No, I'm kidding. I just had a busy month and I went on vacation for a little while and I got COVID, so I've been recovering from that. So if I wasn't up to my full self today, it's because, or this video I should say, it's because I have COVID. So yeah, that's been it though. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace.